I used to work for the city, Department of Records. My job was to sit in a dusty basement and turn 30 years of paper maps into digital files. It was boring work. Until I found the routes that weren't there. You see them every week, but you don't really see them. The garbage trucks. I'm telling you now, some of them aren't collecting your trash. They're collecting something else entirely. It started as a simple data error. At least, that's what I thought. I was digitizing sanitation routes from the 1980s, and I kept finding these phantom runs. Scheduled pickups at 3 a.m. on streets with no addresses, leading to decommissioned incinerators or landfills that had been parks for 20 years. Every one of these phantom routes had one thing in common. They all serviced a specific type of public trash can. The official model name was the Sentinel 7, a big gray steel box that was supposed to have been replaced decades ago. I started looking around the city on my lunch breaks, and I found them. Dozens of Sentinel 7s still out there, on quiet street corners, in forgotten alleyways, behind bus stops on the edge of town. They were always dented and covered in graffiti, but they were never full. In fact, they were always empty, spotlessly clean inside. I brought my findings to my supervisor. I showed him the logs, the impossible routes, the fuel consumption reports for trucks that were officially listed as scrap. I told him the city was burning money on ghost runs. He didn't even look at my files. He just leaned back in his chair and laughed. He called it bureaucratic rot. Ghost data from old systems that never got purged. He told me to forget it, to stop wasting my time and stick to digitizing blueprints. When I pushed, his tone changed. It got cold. "This is not your concern," he said. "Drop it." So I did. At least, that's what I told him. At night, I started my own investigation. This wasn't just a glitch. This was a system, and it was still active. I started cross-referencing the locations of those Sentinel 7 cans with police reports. I was looking for a pattern, any pattern, and I found one. It was horrifying. People were disappearing, not in a way that makes the evening news. These were quiet disappearances, the forgotten ones. Homeless people who slept in the parks, elderly folks whose families lived out of state, chronic runaways that the police were tired of looking for, people who could vanish and no one would make a fuss. Their last known location was always within a block of Sentinel 7. I found over 50 cases in 10 years. 50 people who were there one day and gone the next. No witnesses, no signs of a struggle. It was like the street just swallowed them whole. One evening, I came home to find a plain manila envelope slipped under my door. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside were photocopies of purchase orders and a project proposal, all stamped with a faded red seal. Department of Urban Stewardship. I'd never heard of them. The project was codenamed the Janitor Initiative. It was a joint program from the 1970s between a private security firm and, of all things, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The proposal described it as an experimental method for urban blight reduction. But they weren't talking about litter. They were talking about people. The documents detailed the Sentinel 7 cans. They weren't trash cans. They were traps. The purchase orders weren't for sanitation trucks. They were for mobile containment and disposal vehicles. Heavily armored, soundproofed, and fitted with an incinerator. The program wasn't about cleaning up the streets. It was about cleansing them. The final document in the envelope was a transcript of a police interview with a maintenance worker who had a nervous breakdown. He was part of a special crew that serviced the Sentinels. He said his job was just to clean them and check the mechanics. He wasn't supposed to ask questions. But one night he heard something. He was doing his rounds in a park, and he heard a sound coming from inside one of the cans. He told the police it was music, a soft, gentle humming, like a lullaby. He thought some kid had dropped a toy inside. So against protocol, he opened it. There was nothing inside. The humming stopped, but as he stood there, confused, he felt the air get cold. And he noticed the inside of the can wasn't just clean. It was refrigerated. He said there was a faint click, and a small, almost invisible nozzle in the back of the can hissed, releasing a puff of clear, sweet-smelling gas. He ran. He never went back. His report was dismissed as a delusion, and he was institutionalized a week later. The lure wasn't a toy. It was the can itself, baiting the curious, the lonely, the lost. I took everything I had to the press. They buried the story. I was fired for accessing confidential city records, and a gag order was placed on me. The official story is that I'm a disgruntled conspiracy theorist. The Janitor Initiative officially ended in 1992. The Sentinel 7 cans were all rounded up and destroyed. But I still take my walks, and I still see them. A new model now. Sleeker, made of black composite material, with a small discreet logo of a stylized broom. They're harder to spot, but they're there. The phantom roots are gone from the city's digital records, but some nights I can still hear the low rumble of a heavy truck, long after the regular trash has been collected. So, I'm telling you this as a warning. Pay attention to the things you walk past every day, and if you're ever out late and you see one of those trash cans sitting on a corner where it doesn't belong, don't get curious. Don't stop, just cross the street, because some of them aren't waiting for trash, they're waiting for you.